Good morning, welcome to this week's edition of CopaLoadofRacing. A wee bit later than usual, and that was due to the fact I was at Musselburgh yesterday for their Friday afternoon meeting, and it was brilliant, I have to say. Great day there in the Ipperson restaurant, and I would highly recommend it. A couple of winners as well, which makes the day good, so I'm a wee bit rough this morning, but we must press on because, of course, it is Guineas weekend. And that brings back a lot of great memories, I have to say, when you think of the horses that I've seen win this great race. The likes of Rock of Gibraltar and George Washington, gorgeous George Washington. You have See the Stars. A way back, I remember seeing Zaphonic win it. And much more recently, of course, 7 years ago, the greatest one was Franco, in my eyes. Visually, it was fantastic, of course. Magnificent performance. The famous commentary by Ian Bartlett, he was 15 lengths clear at the bushes, will always stick in the memory. And of course, what makes it even better is the fact that he went on and became this great horse, a bit of a legend, of course, and that makes the race even more significant, I have to say. And that sometimes is what racing's about, is the visual aspect of it, and what you see with your eyes. Of course, you can look through the sectionals and so on, and that's all very invaluable. Of course, it is. But the actual, when you show even non-racing fans that race, they even go, wow. It was a performance to behold. And with Franco now at stud, his job is to try and produce other legends, and Ellercam is aiming to be one of them. Owned by my, when I was a kid, the favourite colours of Sheikh Hamdan, who will be really desperate. I think it's a massive operation, of course, and they've had the likes of Takruda down winning the Oaks, of course. She did very well and then went on to win the King George. And then you think of Muharar and horses of that calibre that they've had, big Group 1 winners, but they really would like to have a more classic winners to their name. And this horse certainly has that potential. Out of Attraction, of course, as well, another great horse. So the breeding lines are there. It's, he's a high calibre here. He's not had a race this season, but that's not a negative in my view. Won't be the first time that a horse has came into the season and went on to manage to win the Guineas, having not run this season. The two performances last season, the one at York and then subsequent to that the Group 3 win at Newmarket, were all impressive. It's a matter of just coming on from there. Mark Johnson, one of my favourite trainers, without a doubt. There is a negative that I do have in my mind, is for all that I love Mark Johnson and how well he performs, there is this wee nagging doubt that I've sometimes seen a lot of what he's had as a 2-year-old and really been impressed by it, and then when it comes out as a 3-year-old, it's maybe not as, it's not came on over the winter and improved as much as you maybe thought. But he's really held this horse in high regard, and as I say, it only made its debut back in September last year. So they have, as I say, they hold the horse in high regard. They've kept it pretty much. Mark Johnson isn't shy to have a horse out running on a regular basis, as we'll speak about when I speak about one of my tips for Hamilton later. But this horse, he obviously has kept under wraps this season and has felt confident enough to just ignore the trials that he could have went for and just had a racecourse gallop, and here we go, bang, straight into the Guineas. I think with a lot of Franco prodigies, it's the future. A lot of Franco's horses seem to improve as they get older. So today might not necessarily be the day for Ellercam. It may be near the end of this season. It may be next year as a 4-year-old. So it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out. And I, for one, think it's got a hell of a chance still, due to the fact that it's of its high calibre breeding. Each way terms, James Garfield, I really can't be ignored. Won the Greenham, something that Franco obviously did, and went on to win the Guineas. A lot being said about that race. Did they finish in a bit of a heap? Is it, can a horse of that, coming out of that type of race, then go on and win this Group 1? Yeah, it's going to be interesting, but I think with Frankie on board, you can't ignore and may run a big race at a big price. Of the others, Saxon Warrior seems to be getting a lot of interest over the past 24 hours and has shortened up in the betting. Gustav Klimt, obviously, both those horses coming from the powerful Coolmore operation. Ryan Moore, of course, isn't going to be here today at Newmarket. He's going to be over for the Kentucky Derby in Mandelson, but we'll be back tomorrow. So we'll be getting that flight straight back over to race at Newmarket tomorrow. So I'm not. Those have got a crack. He's got, obviously, Aidan O'Brien's got a phenomenal record in both the 2,000 and 1,000 guineas, so cannot be ignored. But Ella Cam's going to be where my money goes. Looking at the rest of the card, we'll just pick out one other horse in the Palace House Stakes, the sprint over 5 furlongs. Havana Grey was a phenomenal 2-year-old. I thought I've seen it burn up the track at Ayr, I'm sure, and has done nothing really that wrong to suggest that he isn't, for this seasonal bow, that this race isn't beyond him. And I fancy him to take that race. I think he will probably go off as favourite, but he looks a real class act, Havana Grey. So that's Saturday in terms of the guineas. Looking ahead at Sunday's card, looking at the 1,000 guineas, Anna Nerium for Richard Hannon is where I'm going to have a wee each way punt on that. Won the European Free Handicap earlier at Newmarket. And won at Salisbury, I think, at the back end of last season. She's an improving sort, it seems, and it's a pretty wide open 1,000 guineas, I think, and so it has a potential of a horse such as this coming through and shining through at a bigger price. So with question marks about some of the more leading players in the market, I think Anna Nerium could run a big race there. In the race before that, the 6 furlong handicap tomorrow at Newmarket, I'll put a bit of money on Eastern Impact for the Fahey Hannigan team. They've got off to a pretty decent start this season, and I think it's Hannigan's only ride at Newmarket tomorrow. Fahey's other horse, Mr. Lupton, Jamie Spencer, I think, so on board that will be a real opponent. I think those two went head to head in this race last year, if I remember, if my mind serves me correct, and I think it could be set up like that again. But Eastern Impact's been hitting the crossbar of late, but I think tomorrow just might be his day. So that's Newmarket dealt with. Let's look at Hamilton, who get their first meeting of the season underway. As I say, the weather looks like it's going to be set fair tomorrow. It's their big family day, so if you're looking for something to do with the kids, then by all means get along to Hamilton. Good racing on the cards as well, and they've got two races that will feature on STV or ITV, wherever you're watching the racing in the UK. One of them's the Tangerine Trees Conditions race, and the horse that I'm going to pick out is Lake Volta for Mark Johnson. Joe Fannin will be on board, and I think he has a belter of a chance in that race. Probably will be second favourite, but Bengali Boys is the other one that's probably going to get market support. Just wonder if the ground's going to be soft enough for him, but we'll see. So Lake Volta for me, and then in the button hook handicap, I'll go for the top weight Firefighting, who, as I said earlier, Mark Johnson's not shy to have a horse running on a regular basis, and this is certainly one of them. He recently was out, I think, at Linkfield, and ran very well. He's been a consistent enough sort, and although he'll be carrying top weight in this race, he'll also have the Hamilton expert Joe Fanning on board, and he may just get it, the fractions right. It likes to stay on, this horse, and going up that Hamilton hill, it's a test. and Joe Fannin knows it better than anyone. So I think those two Johnson horses could run well tomorrow, League Volta and Firefighting. Jacob Black is the one to know. He raced under a penalty in the last race, but he won it Thursday night at Musselburgh, and he's a classy type. You know, he's won handicaps at the likes of Sandown and so on previously, or raced well in some of those races. Went through a bit of a lull, but he seems to come in back, and a horse that was once rated higher up in the handicap has certainly dropped down the weights. And although, as I say, he'll be racing under a penalty in the finale at Hamilton, he should still run a big race. So, as I say, Hamilton's got a great card tomorrow, and if you can get along, get there. There's also racing on Monday at Ayr, their jumps racing finale, and they have a good card on prospect there as well. This is the race meeting that was meant to be staged a couple of weeks ago, but because it fell into, or last week should I say, but because it fell into the break for the jumps jockeys, it was moved to this date. And I have to say it's quite good actually, because with these bank holiday Mondays, a lot of the time we don't have racing in Scotland. A lot of the big the meetings are all taking place down south, so it'll be good that with the weather to be dry again on Monday, to get along to Ayr for their final meeting of the jump season. So, yeah, if you're going along to any of those meetings, have a great day, and I hope you get a few winners. Or if you're just relaxing this weekend, maybe having a wee barbecue, I hope you back a couple of winners, and if you follow the tips, hope they bring you luck. Anyway, I'll be back on Friday night to preview next weekend's racing, and then we're really into the trials for the Derby with Chester and the Dante meeting at York all coming up, and some good meetings in Scotland as well. Hamilton really gets powering through. We've got Braveheart Night coming up as well this month. So, CopaLoad of Racing, folks. Have a great weekend.